our second conversation in the series of conversations, and it's great to see some of you who were here last week, and it's also great to see you people as well. And really, what we picked up last week when we were doing our conversation in looking at impartiality in adult outreach is that there's clearly a real interest in work with adults from people who are working in HE and people who are working in HE in the further education sector. So we are really appreciative of you coming and the fact that we can share our work with you. So really the purpose of these sessions is it's a chance for us to share our work, to hear about yours, to think about common features and common issues related to working with adults in the community, in adult education, in outreach and student support in relation to mature students. Clearly this is a time where, you know, we've been through huge changes in our work with online learning. We're not sure, obviously, what the new normal is, but it's certainly a time where we think it's useful to review what we're doing, as well as the fact that I think governments in general are going to centre adults more in education and lifelong learning, given the issues related to employment and skills and the pandemic. So you will see in the chat, there's a link to the Lifelong Learning Centre. What we do, we're a hub at the university for working with adults, plus doing delivery on foundation years, on part-time courses, programs, and also we have our own degree provision. And so we do teaching and learning, plus we undertake outreach and also student support. So just to get on to the background on this particular conversation on adult education, University of Leeds has a long history of delivering adult education in the community. And the work that we have done has related to various, incomes, fee incomes, really. So in the past, we've had funding just from government for working in adult education. Now the work is very much focused around widening participation. And so our links in adult education with the widening participation remit are very much to do with progression, recruitment, as well as preparing adults for study if they're interested. So it's very much about giving people the choice of thinking about higher education for those who may not traditionally have done that. So that's where we locate our adult education. We have worked traditionally with all the local adult education providers. Long links with the Workers' Education Association. We work with the local authority very closely. We work with further education, and we work with a range of providers in the voluntary and community sector. Okay, now I can see that I've got some housekeeping to deal with. I think everyone will know, has had the notification that this event is recorded, and that the format of the event, we will start with case studies. You'll have time to ask questions. Then we intend to go into smaller groups to be able to have far more of a conversation. Then coming back where we will look at common themes. When we go into group discussion, you will have access, and there will be a link to a Padlet where we will be scribing and recording issues and to bring back to the main session. Okay, I think that we can go with the case studies. Just to say to my colleagues, and I will introduce Fiona, Olivia and Lynn and Casey, and you will introduce yourselves. And Fiona is going first. And just to say to colleagues that we will sort of, if you can do maximum of 12 minutes, I will try and keep to time, and then there will be time for questions after that. Okay, Fiona, do you want to kick off?
Thanks very much, Lindsay. I will start off with sharing my screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see this. And what I'm going to be talking about today in 12 minutes is our Jumpstart Taster course. This is part of our pre-entry activity that we offer people who are interested in higher education but not quite sure if it's for them. So I'm going to talk about what we do, why we do it, particularly thinking about critical thinking and how we've adapted and what we're taking forward. And this is a photo from one of our chemistry sessions with our amazing tutor, Felix, who, as you can see, likes to kind of create a lot of very kind of explosive things going on in the classroom. So first of all, Jumpstart, it's free, we run it twice a year, 6 to 10 weeks. It developed out of a conversation with our FE partners who talked about adults who were studying at level 2 in community settings, and there wasn't really a way for them to understand, to know really or get a taste of what higher education was about. So it's about bridging that gap. It's a selective course. We have about 100 applications a year and accept about 50. So I interview everybody. Really the criteria is that people can't have a qualification above level 2 and must have been from some kind of WP or background where they haven't had opportunities in the past. And we usually have about 50% of people progress to applying to HE after the course. Many others choose to do a GCSE or something to enhance their application for the following year. And we stay in touch with everybody to help them. And we work a lot with our IIG colleagues on that. So just on the bottom line, I put a bit of the kind of underpinning ideas. So Jumpstart very much draws on the radical adult education tradition of really useful knowledge, particularly thinking about the women's movement's contribution to adult education around things like the access movement, Paulo Freire and transformative education. So thinking about the importance of being able to critically analyse the world and our place within it and how we can understand it better through critical analysis. We start with community development approach, as we do with all our outreach work. So starting where people are at and what their experience is. And an important element, as I'm sure everyone will agree, is building people's sense of belonging and confidence as learners, particularly if they've had negative experiences in the past. So I've got this little diagram, which I thought might be an interesting way of just explaining quickly how Jumpstart works. So these blue squares at the back, I thought these are the kind of themes. A very important part of it is agreeing a group contract where we create a safe space of mutual respect so people can discuss difficult and uncomfortable topics. And that's really a lot of the point of it, giving people that kind of space to start to kind of challenge their own ideas and other people's ideas in a very respectful way. So just going anti-clockwise round, we've got questioning is a very important part of the course. We look at Socrates and the importance of fostering a non-judgmental attitude. We also look at critical thinking all the way through, and reflection is a really important part of it. So people can locate their own experiences within a wider social, economic and political context. So in the middle here, we've got just kind of how it works. We have different subjects each week. So I work with tutors across the Lifelong Learning Centre who provide different subjects in a very accessible way. Again, starting with kind of where people are at. So we might do a chemistry session on recycling textiles. And that's, you know, people have found that really, really interesting, and it's a great way into chemistry. My colleague Lynn has done a great session on graffiti, and people have found that really fascinating. So again, just having a look through, we use active participatory learning methods such as photo voice, which I'll go on and talk about in a little bit. We build, again, that confidence building, particularly around academic writing and digital skills, and just the importance of learning from each other. So again, back to that non-hierarchical approach of the tutor not being the expert. So I just thought I'd include this screenshot of our latest photo voice exhibition, which we did online using a Padlet. I've just taken a snapshot so that it is kind of still anonymous. And this is, people are given the job to take photos of what education means to them and then post them on the Padlet with a bit of text, and then we discuss it. And photo voice, again, has its roots in Paulo Freire and also feminist pedagogy. And it's really a chance for people to explore things from their own perspective and share that. And then the idea is that they are able to use this to influence people in some ways, that you have an exhibition and invite stakeholders. We haven't really been able to do that this time, but you can see the kind of range of different things people have put on. You can see somebody's put on Africa and African American movies, and that was an excellent learning point for everybody to discuss that. Moving on, I've got just a couple of feedback quotes about kind of critical thinking, and I'm sorry they're a bit long. I will just read them out in case anybody can't see them on their screen. So the first one on the left-hand side says, "I would probably never have met all the different people on the course normally. One discussion left me feeling a bit deflated, but after researching it and reflecting on it from the other person's point of view, it left me in a better position because I was more educated on it. Being able to speak to people and be open and honest about things has given me a better understanding and education of things that I wouldn't have necessarily had." And I really like that because she's identified her discomfort and the fact she has gone away and thought about it and researched it and changed her position. The right-hand side, again, I'll just read quickly. "I've most enjoyed learning about critical thinking during Jumpstart. What learning about critical thinking has given me is a name for something that was quite abstract to me before. It's clarified that anyone who is willing and able to think around an issue and take into consideration alternative views can gain a new perspective or build on an existing one. Ways I can broaden my own perspective. It's incredibly exciting." So again, it's just that enthusiasm, and also that thing of knowing that there's a term for something that people are already doing, and that's very much what Jumpstart, and I would say all our work, is about, is just showing people that they're already doing this, and just going to university has a more of a fancier name for it. So moving on. All right, just having to move the screen around a bit. So how we've adapted to the pandemic, we've run 2 courses on Zoom. And I just put a few points on here, and I'm sure anybody who's had to adapt online learning, these are familiar with, just that we've had to use the phone a lot to talk through any concerns, which has actually been quite useful because we've talked about online learning. The importance of establishing a community right at the beginning of the course. We did quite a lot of that before doing any subject sessions. We did a lot of games and breakout rooms. Important to have lots of regular interactive activities, and acknowledging that people are sitting down for a long time, so they might have to stretch and have breaks quite often. Low risk activities, looking for low tech solutions. My colleague Lisa did a great one where we were doing power, and she just got people to draw a picture of power and hold it up to the screen. And the importance of a kind of asynchronous platforms along with live. But, and then I've put, of course, we must always remember that online isn't possible for those people who haven't got the resources. And that is the thing I think we have to remember. I think probably the most vulnerable learners are the ones who find it most difficult to access online. So just feedback for online learning. We've had some very positive feedback. Normally I'd be silent in group situations. On Zoom, I found it easier to speak up and experience less anxiety. I think, again, I'm sure that resonates with lots of people who've been teaching classes. And the breakout rooms are a good opportunity to discuss the topics in more detail with a few others, and we built up a lovely rapport with each other, finding a lot of common ground. So again, the importance of building in that kind of social aspect to any session using the breakout rooms. So I think I've nearly finished now. So going forward, I think it's just taking elements, really thinking about what's worked and what hasn't worked, and having some kind of unblended course going forward will be a benefit in many different ways. Maybe running an online course only for people who can't get to the university. We found a lot of people have been able to access Jumpstart online who wouldn't have been able to get in for reasons such as mobility, they live far away, or they just can't fit it in, or childcare. Guest tutors repeating sessions, and also exploring different ways of supporting students. And also, I think, keeping in mind the lack of accessibility for people who haven't got internet or have not got good internet connection and haven't got devices. So I think that's me done now. So if anybody has got any questions or clarification questions, please do ask me.
Thanks very much indeed, Fiona. And I'm just going to add, Fiona, that Jumpstart is actually the first non-accredited course that we ran pre-pandemic on campus, that all our adult education in the past has been in the community. But it was a way of actually bringing people together from different areas locally onto campus. Okay, any questions, any comments for Fiona? Louise.
Hi, yeah, thanks Fiona, that was really interesting. I was just wondering if you could clarify what times of the year that you run the Jumpstart sessions, and also if you could repeat as well what kind of, I know it's quite a loose term for it, but entry requirements it was. What level was it that you were expecting people to come to you for Jumpstart?
Yeah, thanks, Louise. We run it, at the moment, we run it twice a year, starting in October and also in January. We have talked about possibly running a summer Jumpstart or maybe at other times of year. And the entry conditions are really so that we are able to kind of work with people who have level 2 as their highest qualification. So GCSE is their highest qualification. They don't have to have any qualifications at all. I have a chat with everybody to start with, really just to kind of check out how they're feeling. If they're very unconfident about their literacy, we might talk about them going to do a course at college first to brush up on their English and then come back to Jumpstart, because we don't want to set people up to kind of think, oh, you know, university is the next step, where actually they have to go off and work on their English or their maths for a year or so. And also, I think confidence is the other entry requirement that people have. If people are very confident, then it's not the right course for them, because they can kind of do it themselves anyway. So it's a mix of different things. Does that answer your question?
It does, thanks Fiona, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Anybody else? Willie. Hi, Willie.
Hi, Lindsay. Sorry I was late. So
No problem.
I missed your words of wisdom at the start. Just following up on that answer, Fiona, that would imply, if I think you suggested 50% of people taking the courses then apply to HE, but you're effectively capping those coming on at level 2. So that sounds like a pretty impressive return. Do you have a breakdown in terms of whether that is that progression largely straight into the first year of the degree, or is that progression into foundation years and similar?
Yeah, I do have detailed records on this, and it's usually into a foundation year or an access course. So because they've got level 2, the next step is level 3 usually. Sometimes they might go straight into a degree depending on their experience.
Great, thank you, that's helpful.
Hi, Helen.
Hiya, thanks Fiona for that. What you've said, there sounds like there's a lot of similarities with what we do with our Discover course in Sheffield. And I think probably one of the common themes across people working with mature learners is kind of how to recruit to these activities and kind of where to find these potential mature learners. So I wondered if you could just maybe just say a little bit about how you target people for the course and how you recruit them.
Thanks, Helen. I think it's very much based on our community outreach and engagement work as a whole. So we have kind of a number of different strands working with adults at different stages, really. So in many ways, we might have been working with somebody already before they come to Jumpstart. So they might have visited in a community centre, they might have done a GCSE at college and then gone on to Jumpstart. I think the other thing is we do have a really broad network of community partners and FE and statutory partners. So we can just advertise it. And I think it's been running for about 10 years now. So I think word of mouth also, people do recommend it to each other. We've got former students who recommend it to new people as well. And of course, the Lifelong Learning Centre staff, they might have an application for somebody who's not quite ready for their course, so they might refer them to us, and also our IAG colleagues will often refer people to us. So I guess a number of different sources.
Thanks, Fiona. Rob.
Thanks. I get very excited by this type of case study. To what extent are older people involved in your cohort? And when I'm talking about older people, I'm talking about 50 plus.
Yeah, we have a huge range of ages. We have people in their 50s, 60s, 70s. So typically, yeah, I would say we have typically, I suppose, yeah, people 30s, 40s, 50s, sometimes 60s, yeah.
Right, thanks. And secondly, I wondered if you had, I mean, obviously, essentially, it is an individual, a program for the individual. I wondered if any of your evaluation over the past 10 years has looked at impact on the Leeds sort of neighbourhood approach, because the community development side of things would seem to be very strongly linked with what you're trying to do. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think we do get feedback from our community partner organisations, and we do talk to them about kind of how they engage with us. I'm just thinking in terms of evaluation, whether we have specifically talked to our community partners about impact, and I'm not sure we have. So that's an interesting thing we should perhaps think about. Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much.
Ali.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for that, Fiona. That was great. My question, I guess, is about, we did a very similar thing at Birkbeck with paper courses, and what we found on the online side of things is that it was relatively difficult to kind of ensure that the numbers stayed kind of healthy. We did have a significant drop off, kind of depending on people's sort of availability and kind of working with adults. They've often got quite busy lives. So how did you kind of ensure that your numbers stayed good, or like, did you also experience an issue where people online kind of dropped off a little bit more?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question, Ali, because I have to admit I wasn't a big fan of online teaching before this, but now I just think Zoom is amazing. And I think I think people really appreciated coming together. The first course we ran started in November, so it was during the lockdown, and they really appreciated coming together as a group and seeing each other and not wearing masks. And I think what we did, I think maybe me talking to everybody individually to start with really helped. And then we did a lot of community group building. So we did loads of kind of, fun and silly activities, but they got people just breaking down all those barriers and feeling much more at ease. And we did that for the first couple of sessions. And we did a lot of breakout rooms as well. So people could, and again, they really, really appreciated that time to talk to each other. I was interested to see for the second Jumpstart course, but it was the same. And again, people did appreciate that kind of the time to talk to each other quite a lot. And Yeah, and I must say the groups have stayed in touch with each other afterwards as well. So it is, yeah, it is kind of really interesting. But I think it was very much about building that community and the mutual respect, but also making it relaxed and low key and silly. And I think using the Padlet really helped, because we had a kind of discussion that went on in the background all the time. So we didn't just use the Padlet for the photo voice exhibition, we used it right from the start, and people posted stuff about themselves, pictures of their pets, that kind of stuff, as well as having the live sessions. So yeah, it's a really interesting question.
It is, yeah. Yeah, and I think colleagues would say, Ali, I mean, that we noticed a difference in the likes of Jumpstart sometimes compared to one-off tasters, you know, where there would be more drop-off. But that I mean, that business about relationship building is something that we've been really trying to focus on online. Thanks very much, everyone. Can
Lindsay,
I go?
Sorry,
oh, sorry.
There's just Fiona, that there's Jem asked a question in the chat.
Oh.
I'm aware we probably have to move on to the next.
Sorry, Jem, I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, yes, I wasn't paying attention either. So you utilise clearing period to help those eligible gain access to the course. We don't really use clearing for Jumpstart because people are kind of before that stage. Usually for Jumpstart, people don't know what university is or UCAS or anything like that. And then promoting within the community is very much within our community contacts and with the groups that we're already working with. I would say, I guess we've kind of built that up over the years. And it's also how we market it as well. I think it's in a very, we try and make it in a very accessible way. So we don't talk about university too much. It's about dipping your toe in the water to try it, and just, and also I think the impartiality of it is impartial. So we're not, it's not kind of trying to funnel people into the University of Leeds. It's about just getting an idea of higher education. And I always say to people, if at the end of the course you don't want to do it, that's fine. We're just there to help you make an informed decision. So is there any other questions? But I'm sure we need to move on anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks very much, Fiona. Really interesting questions there. Okay, can we move on to Olivia and Lynn, and you can introduce what you're doing, Olivia.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. I hope everyone can see that. Okay, thank you, Fiona. It leads really nicely into what Lynn and I are going to be talking about. So for those who haven't met me before, I'm Olivia. I work as part of the Communities and Partnerships team in the Lifelong Learning Centre. And I'm going to be introducing my colleague Lynn Cade in a moment to talk about some of the sessions that we've run with community groups over, well, many years now. So the Lifelong Learning Centre works in partnership with a range of statutory and voluntary sector organisations. Here are just a few logos of different learning providers, addiction recovery, support organisations, parent support, family learning, lots of different organisations across the city and the region that we have kind of long-term partnership work with. And in terms of what we're able to offer to groups, negotiated sessions, all short courses delivered in community venues. They could be one-off or maybe a few weeks, often around kind of creative topics that engage people with thinking about learning. And we also invite groups to come in to have a visit to the university as well, to have a look around the campus, to meet our mature student learning champions, and we'll often try and match mature students with similar life experience or backgrounds as the group to the group coming in, so they can kind of see themselves reflected in others with similar experiences who are now studying in higher education. And as part of those campus visits, we'll often specifically design a taster session for the group around an area that they're interested in, or a contemporary issue that might capture their attention, or just something that's going to be relevant to them. And online alternatives in the last few months have included virtual visits to existing groups, such as our partners Forward Leeds have continued throughout the pandemic to run Zoom sessions for their addiction recovery groups, and we've been able to go in and do some sessions with those. So just trying to meet people where they're at, but also acknowledging that in the last year that has been very difficult because some of our community partners didn't initially have the resources to be able to switch provision online. So for some that's just emerging. And in terms of why we do this work, well, it's very much part of the community development approach and ethos that Fiona talked about. Building critical thinking skills, consciousness raising, supporting empowerment and agency in local communities. And in Leeds, the approach to community development more and more has become the ABCD, the asset-based community development approach, which really chimes with the way that we would work, where we're never approaching things from a deficit perspective. We're always seeing the strengths and the capabilities in communities and in individuals, and we're trying to add value to those and build and develop people's agency to be able to move forward in their lives and in their communities. It's very much about sustainable partnerships and trying to add value to existing adult community education provision, understanding that there are limitations in terms of resources and what's possible with the funding at the moment, and seeing where the university has a responsibility to be doing something to engage with its local communities, and how can we support what's already going on out there with our fantastic partners. And it's very much part of a continuum of engagement with adults in diverse areas of representation in higher education, underrepresentation in higher education. So many of our participants in those campus visits or community sessions will then go on to something like an advice and guidance appointment, attend a summer school, some taster sessions, maybe progress to Jumpstart and potentially beyond as well. So everything kind of feeds into everything else. Okay, so now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Lynn Cade, the Programme Manager for our Preparation for Higher Education course.
Good morning, everybody. I'm presuming everybody can hear me okay. Let's have a little thumbs up, please, just from some. Can you hear me, everybody? Brilliant, thank you. So, my name's Lynn Cade. I'm the Programme Leader for the Preparation for Higher Education, and that is has been online this year, and it is run from the Lifelong Learning Centre, and it does what it says. It does be prepared people for progression on to a degree here at the University of Leeds, or another university that is more appropriate for that preparation student. Now, part of my job is to work really, really closely with the community and partnerships team in terms of offering some of the taster sessions that my colleague Olivia has just mentioned, and to support for the campus visits, and to work with local community organisations to run and design taster sessions to suit that organisation, not always with the emphasis being on encouraging people to take up coming to university. It's more about giving people some agency, alleviating any sort of concerns or uncertainties about the role of education, but also giving people the opportunity to make an informed decision around where they are in terms of their learning journey and whether they want to go further with that. So I work very, very closely with community and partnership teams. Okay, Lindsay, please, would you just press my button for me? Not Lindsay, sorry, I think it's Olivia. Thank you very much. So let me try and give you some examples. Olivia just gave you some of the sort of symbols of some of the organisations we work with, and like she said, we do design the sessions to run so they meet the needs of the participants, and that they are at a level that participants will feel comfortable to engage with the sessions, but that those sessions will have some meaning to that person's life. So for one example, we had a group of women that came in. It was a wellbeing group, people with some mental health issues, and they used crafts, particularly knitting, to alleviate some anxieties and to give time out. And they came in and I ran a session on how knitting and why knitting can be a political act, and we looked at yarn bombing and protest crafts. And the emphasis, again, like Olivia said, is to offer some agency to those participants. So the sessions would normally end with participants in some way contributing to the design and the ongoingness of the session. So, for example, in this session, participants, after they sort of explored and looked at some examples of yarn bombing and critically analysed why people might want to do something, a knitting act to create a political message or to encourage change, or to actually have a voice on an issue, I passed it over to them to say, what would you do if you had the opportunity to do some yarn bonding? And I'm going to share this one with you because it was a lovely example where one participant said she would make small brooches, small brown brooches, small brown brooches that look like little hoops. And there's a reason for this. And she said, because the thing that I would protest about my neighbourhood and my local community is dog walkers not clearing up after the dogs. So she says, I would give these out rather than arguing and getting involved in a confrontation about something she felt quite angry about. She thought it might be good to give people a gift, a small brown brooch, to remind that person in a good way that, please, can you clear up after yourself, because for me it's an issue in my life. So there's a little example. Olivia, can you press the button please for me? So another example is where I've worked with prison-based learners quite a lot as part of my work for the community partnership team, and that involved working one morning per month in the education department in our local prison. So this is people that wouldn't be able to come to us or engage on online learning. So this is before pre-COVID times. And we did a session on understanding philosophy and how it can support us to explore the nature of our realities and the decisions we make in our lives. And again, the men at the prison had requested something on this line. They were exploring their own position in society, their own paths that they'd taken that had led to where they were, and wanted to understand a little bit more, and we're spending a lot of time reflecting because they had a lot of time to reflect. So we looked at philosophy, but while we was looking at sort of introducing philosophical ideas and some of the historical philosophers who have informed modern day philosophy, we also added critical thought to that and looked at things like, why are philosophers, for example, represented by white men, when we know that there are contemporary philosophers and probably historical philosophers that we haven't heard of who were not white men. So we looked at that. And then, of course, what we try and do in all the taster sessions is bring it into real life, into everyday life, into now, what's happening now. So if I were to run this session today, I would link it to issues around identity and representation in society. I would link it to the Euro footballs and possibly look at a contemporary issue at the moment that causes a lot of discussion about taking the knee. And hopefully this would facilitate critical thought and debate and discussion in a safe way and in a way that participants could feel they could engage and contribute to, because it was part of their own lived experiences and what's happening today. Please can you press the button for me, Olivia? And then another example was Forward Leeds, where they asked for a session to do with understanding what's happening in the news. And it was the time when fake news really became more prominent. So it was the Trump era, the Brexit era, and people were saying, we're trying to follow the news, we're trying to gain some skills, but how do you know what's real and what isn't? And how can we develop some sort of literacy skills so that when we are absorbing vast amounts of information, how do we make some informed choices about what we read, what we view, and how can we analyse that in a way that feels accessible so that we can try and make some independent decisions about what's happening in the world around us. Next slide, please, Olivia. Okay. So the point of the sessions that I do with the community partnership team is that they allow and they promote participants as being the experts, not me. All I'm doing is opening a few books. All I'm doing is providing a couple of signs. Look at this, maybe consider it like this way. But I choose topics that the participants can engage with because by experience they are already experts on it. The sessions are interactive with an emphasis on dialogue. There's a lot of sharing and learning within the sessions and opportunities for people to share and reflect on their own lived experiences. So if we are discussing a theory, i.e. philosophy, how has that theory been a reality for some people? How is it in practice? How does something like philosophy become something that people use in their everyday practical lives? The emphasis on that the content has meaning and relevance again to the participants, and like I said earlier, is linked to a contemporary issue, so that when they leave the session, they've not only contributed by an expert, by experience within the session, they can take that experience, that learning, that discussion, that few hours away with them out into their own lives, and hopefully then learning will continue in some way, and that people are encouraged to see things a little bit differently, that people are wanting to explore the world around them and their own worlds and their own ways of being and seeing. The sessions are intended to support participants to maybe delve into further learning. So some people may come on one of these sessions and they take the learning away with them, and that's it. Other people may then come to one of our taster sessions after the community group session. They may come on to Jumpstart, and from there come into the PhD programme, which will hopefully lead them into degree level study, if that's the right choice for them. Next button, please, Olivia. So all the sessions are aimed at supporting the groups themselves to not only attend the session and engage in them, but actually have a say in the design of the sessions. And the end of the sessions, I try and always promote some sort of learning continuation at whatever level that person feels comfortable at that point. Next button, please. Oh, I think we're at the end. So has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask now? The sun's shining on me and making me feel very wonderful.
Thanks very much, Lynn.
You're welcome.
We heard you were a wee bit muffled, and I have to say some of the subtitles were hilarious that were coming up.
Do you know, I wasn't looking at them, so I'll have to have a look.
Okay, anybody got any questions for Lynn and Olivia? Willie.
Sorry, I was hoping someone else might go first. I've got two questions. One is, I can't resist, Lynn. I can't quite work out what the banner behind you says, but I'm intrigued.
It says the play reflects life, and there is a backstory to the banner. When people come on the PhD course, many of them are very new to learning. They may have been to one of the community sessions, they may have done Jumpstart, they may have done GCSEs, but then they come to PhD and feel very much like little fishes well out of the big ocean, to put it bluntly. And so one of the first activities I might do is ask those students to watch Educating Rita, the film, or the play by Willie Russell with Michael Caine in it. I'm sure you've seen it, Educating Rita. And we have in the past, when allowed to, been on trips to the theatre, and one of those trips was to see Educating Rita. And it's about saying to people, you know, they kind of watch that film or the play and always say, oh, it's a bit like me, that's exactly how I feel. I can share my story because I was called Rita when I went to university. It was in the era when access courses became quite prominent. So my tutors used to call me Rita because of that film. But it's also because, so we do it as a kind of identity thing, so that's why I use the banner. But also on the PhD course, I do utilise a lot of media products, TV, film, newspaper, plays, etc., so that people can see that actual learning can be something that happens in their living rooms, and so watching television in a more active way rather than passive way, for example, in plays. So that was a really long way to say that's what that's about. I'm not I'm not actually outside the theatre, but yeah.
Lynn, much as we love seeing you, I'm just wondering whether you'd be a wee bit less muffled without your video. Do you think?
It might be my microphone, to be honest.
You're fine now. You're fine, and you're coming and going.
Oh, really?
John, do you have a question?
Thank you.
Is that better?
We'll see.
Willie had 2 questions as well, Lindsay.
Oh, sorry, Willie.
Yes, one of them.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, Willie, we'll come back to you. We've got John, Claudia, and then we'll come back to you if that's okay, Willie.
Hello, John.
Okay, thank you. My question is really one about your range of partners, and you've spoken about the range of community organisations and so on. And this may be a slightly broader question than just to this particular presentation. But how do you work? Do you work with other universities in the area, and how do you make those links work? I mean, I'm asking from the point of view of a university in which we don't have as developed an adult education provision as you do in Leeds, and where we're trying to rebuild it. And the question of civic university agreements and that kind of thing is significant. I just wondered, working with other universities in the area, and I just wondered whether you could speak about that.
Well, I think I'll respond to those colleagues. At the moment, we don't have an agreement with other universities. In the past, and again, it's been, well, partnership and driven. We have worked closely with other universities. We're not at the moment. Certainly, we know that one of the other universities in the city was putting on a similar provision to us in relation to Jumpstart, and then there was consultation. But in the work that we do in partnership with organisations and adult education providers in the city, the other universities at the moment are not out doing that kind of work with adults. So you'll probably know with Uni Connect, the OSF funding for widening participation, local and regional funding, then there are partnerships there. And within Uni Connect, the OFS is seeking for that to have a strand on mature students, on adults. I don't think there's very much money connected, but at least it's a step in the right direction, and we will hope that we will have some influence in what kind of work that they will do there. I mean, a lot of our, obviously with the partnerships with FE, the WA, local authority, have been sustained over a long time, but given the kind of funding issues around voluntary and community sector, community organisations come and go, and it's very much us trying to identify people and build relationships with those organisations that are interested in widening their adult education provision and widening sort of opportunities for the people that they're engaged with. Does that answer your question, John?
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia from Swansea University in Wales, and I've got a very practical question. I just wondered, Lynn, how many people you have in each group, because obviously there's always an issue with the interactive approach, which I think is absolutely crucial. If you have too many people, particularly online, it becomes unworkable, and I just wondered how you manage that issue.
Well, normally in the group we can have everything from 10 to, I think the biggest group we had was 40. Olivia, am I correct?
Yeah, so it's really down to who the community organisation, particularly with the campus visits, how many come to the group on that day. And some of our community partners have bent over backwards, like giving lifts to people, picking them up from their houses if they're really not confident, in the days where we could do that. And yeah, we've had some very small groups, and then we can have nice kind of informal sessions. But when we work with our family learning colleagues, for example, and Gail's here and has just been putting something in the chat, what we do is try and visit all the different family learning groups across a few weeks and then bring them all together on campus. And I think we did have more than 40 one time, and it was a bit hairy, but we very much took the same approach of trying to then make it kind of a celebration and really fun and really welcoming, and get some interactive learning in there as well. So we just kind of roll with whatever we get on the day, I suppose, is the short answer to that, Claudia.
And I think there is something around activities when designing activities, being aware of the numbers. So if there are, say, for example, a break activity, you would make those break activities small groups, but then I always have a process, sort of a set of rules as such, which are, have a discussion, make sure everybody contributes, but then can I have a nominated spokesperson who will feed back to the whole group. So it's kind of on that sort of process of managing numbers, which is what we do on PHE as well, so that people can at least feel that their contribution has been fed back and that they've had a contribution.
Oh, the subtitles are an absolute joy. Lynn, I don't think you're any better off video than you are on video. I think you just keep coming and going. Claudia, did that help? Yeah, thanks. Okay, Willie, just before coming back to, I'm looking at Rob. Rob, you were talking about the issue around cuts, quite rightly, and how can university fulfill their commitment?
And it's, I think, Lynn, it's this issue of where there's no tradition,
yes,
or a limited tradition, how can the case be made to the institution as a whole that this is a priority? Yeah.
Okay, well, so I'm talking about England as in the funding streams and the priorities. We are very much linked to the access participation plan. And what we have done within our university is really, I mean, in a sense, we do as much in reach, working with management and faculties as we do outreach, but making sure that mature student recruitment is an issue. As a pre-92 university, our student recruitment is not high at the university, but I mean, there has been a lot of noises nationally about concerns about mature students, concerns about part-time delivery, the lack of it in relation to the changes in fees in 2011. So we have done a lot of work in making sure that the university signs up to the requirement for a target for mature students. And that target is on recruitment, but it's also to do with achievement, because we know that if mature students do come into university, and this is just nationally known, retention issues tend to be an issue. So we link the fact, the kind of preparation that we do with mature students prior to university is incredibly important for achievement and success. So it's all the time, it's trying to tie in what we do with adults to what we hear is happening with policy, what the OFS is saying, and working with management that way. So, I mean, so I absolutely take your point, Rob, and, that is absolutely, you know, to do with making sure that you try to have champions at a senior level, which may or may not happen, but the in-reach is really important. Yeah. Willie, back to you. I'm conscious of time, but Willie, come in.
Thanks, Lindsay. My second question. I'll resist adding from a Sheffield perspective an answer to Rob's question, but I guess the one thing I would note, because I see that John has put a link in somewhere in the chat as well. There's a number of conversations and commissions around lifelong learning and the new lifelong learning skills, whatever it is. And so there is a moment here for us in our different contexts to go back and talk to senior management. And you know, whether it has a result in your individual context, I don't know, but I think it's really important for us all to try and make the most of the opportunity we currently have around that. My question was around, you know, I think Olivia or Lynn or indeed Fiona might all have answers to this one. I mean, I really admire the commitment to a kind of a Threrian approach and opening up critical thinking and relevant but therefore raw topics in the different in the different engagements that you have with learners and in the community. And I'm just kind of conscious of that narrative around an increasingly polarized community, and I'm given, you know, your long experience in the kind of work that you're doing, but you're continuing to ask the difficult questions. I'm interested in whether you've either noticed any changes or felt that, whether in the context of Brexit or COVID or Black Lives Matters, you've needed to adapt or you know, work on safe conversations, or however you see it, over the last few years in particular.
Do you want me to start, folks? Is that okay?
Yeah, could we have quite a brief response? Sorry, Willie, Lynn, just because I'm conscious we're running way over on time.
Okay. I think the first thing is that the very initial induction, there was a lot of talk about ground rules. People are encouraged to have those difficult conversations, and what I try and do is manage those with sometimes humour, if it is appropriate, sometimes by looking at the reflective nature of the course, because students do keep a reflective weekly log on the PHE course that I respond to within 24 hours when they put something on there. And in that reflective log, they may feel, or they do feel, usually comfortable enough to vent things that they may have felt uncomfortable talking about in class, and I manage it through that process.
Thanks, Willie, and it's something that we reflect on as a group a lot, and it would be really nice for, you know, for there to be more broader conversations, I think, on this. Thanks very much. And Fiona, you have got Casey's video, have you? Do you want to introduce
I have,
the next? So this is a case study that one of our colleagues who can't be here has done on her work with foster parents. I'm conscious we are over time, but I mean the inputs have been so interesting that I think that we'll just go with being late. Adapt from there. On you go, Fiona.
Right, thank you. I'll just share the slideshow from beginning, and Casey has recorded.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Casey Russell, and I'm going to talk now.
Can everybody hear okay? Yeah, excellent.
About the work with foster carers that we've been doing over the past couple of years. And so just a little bit of information about how it started. We've all had some links with foster carers on our communities and partnerships team within our own previous jobs, or knowing students who are existing carers. So we've had some links in some way with carers in the past. So we've had a basic understanding of the role, and also the local networks that we have developed on the communities team in various sectors, such as schools and primary schools that we've worked with, student carers, social workers and community events. We often come across foster carers, and that's allowed us to really reflect and think about the value of their role and start to acknowledge that as an asset-based role. So they come with so many skills already, and they're already engaging with lots of training within their role from the local council. And we were able to link up then, you know, part-time study options with foster carers who may never have thought about learning or study for themselves, because they may have felt they couldn't do two things at once. Maybe they couldn't be a student and they couldn't care at the same time. So we've just been able to start to draw on some of those links and make those links early on, and decide to try to work a little bit closer with foster carers. So here's some examples of the types of engagement that we've facilitated or been involved with over the past couple of years. As you can see, we share lots of information. So it might be that we share short videos of what we do with foster carers through maybe a closed Facebook group. We've created quizzes around myths and realities of studying as a mature student. We share our events maybe through our SWAY document, which is the low data usage document, and that can be shared through WhatsApp groups, because often, you know, foster carers might be involved, might be part of a WhatsApp support group. We make sure that we have frequent communication with foster carer like support workers or social workers. We've attended big citywide events such as the Civic Hall, or a thank you event that we attended in the summer. We are now linked in with the foster carer mailing list for the city, so any of our events would be shared out via that mailing list. And we do see our work as a long-term partner of foster carers really, and the social workers and support workers that support them. We have visited lots of carer support groups virtually during COVID, and also pre-COVID face-to-face. And just the important point here in blue is that, you know, the narrative that we have felt is really important when engaging with support workers, social workers and foster carers is that carers are already really skilled, so they have lots of training already, theory and practice training. You know, you've got the attachment theory, conflict management theory, and then how to you know, dealing with crisis, and then how to deal with that face-to-face with the young people within their role. So they already have a lot of relevant and transferable skills, and part-time study would be an asset to that, and it wouldn't be a threat to that. And I think that had to be the narrative really, to help those around them, the social workers and support workers, to understand that study wouldn't take anything away from the children and young people that they support. In fact, it may actually help encourage the opportunities for the young people who are looked after, who are in their care. So just a couple of examples of how carers have engaged with us. You know, we're seeing lots of carers coming through, lots of foster carers and kinship carers now coming through after a couple of years of engaging. We're seeing them access our free events and our free pre-entry courses, and also coming in for IAG. But we've got on the left here, we've got Kay, who first had contact with us in 2019. We visited her face-to-face foster carer support group, and she heard from our learning champions. She then went on to apply for Jumpstart, which is the 10-week taster course. She received IAG, and she's now in her first year of our professional studies programme, and she still does her foster carer role. Then we've got A over on the right, and she was first in contact with us in 2020, and this was a virtual contact. So this was done through a mailing list or an email sent through the foster carer support worker, and she already had links to, she's a kinship carer, so she was part of that network, and we are also linked in with that network, and we've delivered creative writing sessions in 2019. She attended the Jumpstart course, the 10-week course, really enjoyed it, then went on to get IAG about her personal circumstances, and has applied for a part-time foundation degree. So they're just two pathways of the journey that two separate carers have taken with us. Now the links with university study, this is just a slide about our approach really in raising the awareness of the value of learning and the importance of learning as an adult and the opportunities to learn as an adult, and really trying to make them links while we're spending time with foster carers. So on the left we've got a session that we ran just for foster carers. This was they're both pre-COVID, but we have actually run sessions digitally, and we've got a couple coming up as well that are done via Zoom. But these two, so we've got the reflective practice session that was for foster carers, and this gave them the opportunity to think about their role and to identify their own strengths within their role, and to hear about the possibilities of further study, next steps or new opportunities. Now this was quite an important session for those foster carers, because they don't really get the space to reflect and to think about how important their role is and the skills that they've already got, and it was really, really powerful and effective. And then we've got the creative writing session, which actually took place in a foster carer's home, and it was a really close-knit group of kinship carers who are, have totally different expectations and set up to the foster carers. They often don't see themselves as foster carers, and we just had to be a bit more sensitive to their situation, and we provided and facilitated the space to think. We went into their situation and they welcomed us into that space and really participated well, I think, in the comfort of their own support group. And it was really effective because they got to consider the challenges of their role, so their struggles were acknowledged. We talked about the importance of their role, and actually what they were doing was fantastic for the children and young people that they were supporting. And they also had to go a creative writing as well, and it was really, really impactful, and there was some real revelation moments. Just to say as well, we've engaged 173 carers in the 3 years over around 10 sessions and events. And then just my last slide really is to say the lessons learned and possible next steps. So, for me and the team, I think they would agree that an ongoing understanding of foster carers' needs is really, really important, to stay tuned in to what their needs are, and as their needs change and adapt, then to keep listening to where they're at, how the carers are doing and what they're currently going through. Find a way to stay connected during times of low engagement, because there will be seasons where they're just not able to engage with us as a partner. Consider that everyone is at a different stage at different times, so that's very much what we're all doing at the moment, as COVID can be different for different people at different times, and just think of, we're not all at the same stage, so just really consider that when communicating and expecting people to get back to you. Having clear limits, that's been a big one for me in saying, actually, we're not a training provider. We can't provide 10-week courses out in the community all the time, but we can give a little snippet of a session and try and encourage your foster carers to enjoy learning. And then going forward, for me in particular, I would say champion the role, make sure that they know the role, that you value the role, and the role is a really important role and it has value, so that they see the value also. Social media can be a good tool for champion digitally as well. Continue to offer tailored sessions. So we were lucky enough to work with foster carers to agree that our sessions could be used as their training hours, which I don't think is normal, but because of the pandemic we were able to do that, because their training is restricted at the moment. And then maybe, you know, look into the future, we could look at maybe a sustainability award, or maybe looking at a Facebook Live interview together, just using our own platform to uplift the foster carer role and really talk about the skills that they already start with, that asset-based approach. And I think that is it for me. I've run over time by a couple of seconds. Any questions and comments there, Fiona, Olivia and Lindsay, I'm sure will answer. But just to say, it's been an absolute privilege, I think, as I said at the beginning, to work with foster carers and to work with social workers and the support workers. And I think they do a fantastic role. And I think actually they come with so many skills, like many of our mature learners already have all the life skills available. And you know, I think they all should be doing or being recognised for their skills and be offered the chance to do some to do some learning at a higher level, you know, or at least know the option is there. But I'll finish now, and thank you and enjoy the rest of the session. Okay, goodbye.
Muted, Lindsay.
Muted, Lindsay.
Thank you. That was for Casey Russell talking about the work that we do with foster carers. And again, you know, that's just another example of trying to think about how we can add value to groups, to particular groups, and then how to try to sustain that relationship. And also, you know, it also links in with the policies around those who are experiencing care. So what I would like for us to do now, if possible, is if people want to have a couple of minutes break, and then we go into to groups, to breakout rooms. That Daniel, are you leading on? Or Jenny?
Sorry, no, my Zoom just didn't want to unmute. Yes, so we will have 3 breakout rooms to have a little bit more for chat in a smaller group. So let's have a break first, shall we say?
We'll have a group, but just a short break. We're running over, but it would be really great if you could join in discussions, so that, you know, it's so we can hear about what you're doing as well. Okay.
So shall we say we meet back here at 20 past?
I was going to say 20, but it's a very short break we're talking.
So let's just...
If the breakout room's open for 20 past, Daniel, that would be great.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
So I'll lead you through it once you get back. But if you just want to have a quick break from your screen now.
And just say, yeah, for those I know, you know, Paula, those who are leaving, thanks very much for joining us. Next week we're doing one on how we support students. And just to echo what Willie was saying, is this is a real moment for us to really be thinking about our work in adults, given government policy. Okay, see you later. Bye just now. So I hope, from what I picked up, everybody seemed to be engaged in discussion. And you will see that you've got a link to the Padlet, so you will see what the other group has written as well. And I'll just pick up, and then maybe people want to respond. What I was thinking about, and I you know, what's clear, isn't it, that we at the Lifelong Learning Centre do have, you know, resources that some of you will not have, and it is very much about, you know, where to put energies when we've got limited resources. So I see in a link there is talk about job centre, and obviously at the moment there's plenty of local money being spent on employment and skills, and it's how to potentially link in there. Clearly finance is going to be an issue, both obviously for students, and I think that the fact that it is finance is different in the four nations is something that we must always remember. I picked up on how we can share about finding the people. How do we identify people? That example from Liverpool, accessing staff working in residential services or just staff at the university. You know, sometimes we do forget about the fact that we've got so many staff at the university who do not necessarily have access to higher level education and training. Well, something's happening in group 3. Does anybody on group 2, what I was particularly going to pick up was about the challenges keeping students engaged, certainly and remotely. You know, that is an issue for all of us. And again, it's one of these areas that it would be so good after these conversations for us to find ways of keeping conversations going. Does anyone want to jump in at this point?
Just to say, from group 2, our conversation was very much around that, about how to, really picking up on Annie's question about how to engage and prepare students for blended learning in the first place. And people, shared lots of different experiences on that.
Excellent. Yeah. So we really would appreciate, I mean, the Padlet link will be kept open. So if people want to write on the Padlets, which we can then share with everybody after the conversations are finished, that would be really, really useful for us. Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to pick up? Common themes? Were people picking up on obviously commonalities and any differences in delivery or expectations?
We had an interesting discussion in group 1 about all being at different stages and recognizing how lucky we are in Leeds with the resource and the institutional commitment that we've had, which isn't always replicated elsewhere, but that there are lots of kind of green shoots of practice coming up and capturing this moment and opportunity with the skills guarantee and government policy possibly widening the horizons for that, and that there's still some very well sustained practice elsewhere, like the diploma at Liverpool, and how institutions can demonstrate their commitment as well to mature students and all the different ways of doing that,
and how we can come together communally to demonstrate that. Willie?
Yeah, we didn't actually discuss this in our group, but kind of trying to come back to the theme of optimism, and that there are some consultations coming on. Well, not coming back to the theme of optimism. There are opportunities in various directions that we need to contribute to. But the thing that's really struck me this year, whether in relation to our Discover course, which is quite similar, I think, to your Jumpstart course in Leeds, or in relation to our foundation year, and which is nearly exclusively mature students, but not entirely so, and which we've in most of the cohort we've taught with. They've been on campus maybe 3 times the entire year. The resilience of the kinds of people that we're working with in such unpredictable and difficult circumstances has been extraordinary. And the communities, they're not quite the communities that we might have built in another year, but nevertheless, I've just been astonished by the strength of the communities that people have been able to develop amongst themselves in this online world. So, you know, I think there's a moment here for us to seize on the benefits of blended as well.
Absolutely, really. I think these are and again, that would benefit having more general conversations about people's experiences within that, and it actually links very well to our next conversation next week, which is very much about student support and relationship building, and the work that the innovative work that has been happening with an app, which in fact Jenny and Helen will be presenting on next week. Helen.
Sorry, Lindsay, just...
Yeah.
You've muted yourself again.
Just to reiterate what Willie was saying, really, that's actually something that we've had feedback, that's feedback we've had from students recently in transition events we've been running about for students progressing, where they've said some of the things that they got out of this year has been a recognition of their own resilience and their own transferable skills that they realise that they're building through this incredibly challenging year. So that was, you know, really heartening. Just wanted to say the student recognising that is a fantastic thing as well.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it's absolutely where there's been positives, but also where we know that there are issues. So I am going to wrap up. I've been told I must wrap up in time. So thank you very much for coming and sharing. I hope you found it useful. We will certainly find it useful. And as I said, if people want to put more comments on Padlet, please do. We will be sharing recordings after all the conversations have finished. And after the 4 conversations are finished, as I've said, you know, we really need to think about whether there is a momentum to keep conversations going so that we can really draw on each other's experience to ensure good practice, as well as coming together to be able to show examples of what we were doing. You know, the fact that we've got Discovery, we've got Jumpstart, you know, we've got the work that's happening in Liverpool and all around. You know, we don't all know what's happening in other universities, and it is so important that we come together rather than waiting for the report from the Office for Students that has one case study from, you know, one institution, and you feel they're not getting to the body of actually what's happening. So the more that we work together at this moment of time, I think the better. Okay, just to watch colleagues, have I mentioned everything that I should have before we finish? I'm getting a nod. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope we'll be seeing you next week. All the best. Bye.